Picture this. You just lost a game of League of Legends, so naturally you want to kill yourself. So you decide, hey, let me play an actual skill-based game. I like that fighting game Guilty Gear Strive, right? I haven't played it a lot since it came out, but sure, why not? So you load it up and you go to online. Alright, I'm on the 5th floor, let's see how many people there are. No one's there. Okay, that's fine, let's go one floor up, then sure, it'll be a little challenging, but let's go up to floor 6. Still, no one's there. Okay, floor 7 it is. You go up. There's finally a couple people, but they're in a game. Dang it, I want to play now. So you go up to the 8th floor, and finally you find an open match. Yes, you say. So you challenge them, and you didn't get a single hit in. So you decide to go back to no life in League of Legends, because at least that game has players. This is why all fighting games fail, and how that's changing. So let me start by making it clear that fighting games failing isn't really meaning they have low sales, but really the absolutely abysmal player numbers and drop-off of these games. Let me elaborate. Let's take the most popular game in the Battle Royale genre. And as of the making of this video, since I'm using Apex Legends, because Fortnite doesn't have player numbers, it's sitting at 140,000 on Steam, only at the moment. Now let's look at the premier fighting game franchise on Steam. Side note, I would say Smash Bros, but that's Nintendo and there is no data on active players. So I think everyone can agree that Street Fighter is the most widely recognized fighting game next to Tekken. So let's check those numbers real quick, and it's sitting at a grand total of 2,000.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
Now, I don't think you need to be a mathematician to see the difference in numbers. And I hear everybody screaming, oh, fighting games are hard and battle royales are super accessible and new, so you can't even come close to comparing them. Well, okay, let's compare it to another genre that's really hard and is known for probably being one of, if not the hardest genre of games there is, the RTS. And if you don't know how hard these games is, let me just play some footage real quick of a top player's keyboard during a match. Yeah, you see this? This was actually done by a human. So don't ever let me catch you saying you can't do a DP motion again. So now that my point's been made, let me look real quick at, if you don't know, the probably second biggest RTS game there is, Age of Empires. And it's sitting at 9,000 players right now. And if you look at the most popular game of the series on Steam, it's sitting at 14,000. Also, this is not to mention that RTS games have been on the decline basically since the release of StarCraft 2 back in 2010. Now listen, I don't think I'm making some grand revelation that fighting games are niche. Almost painstakingly so. But it is my firm belief that it's not that people don't like fighting games. It's a mix of very unfortunate circumstances, and that it all stems from the slow progress of people's mentalities, next to the rapid progress of technology. Now let's look at the fighting game beginnings. Now I'm calling the beginning Street Fighter 2 because that basically made the genre what it is today, for better or for worse. Fighting games have the blessing and the curse of being one of the first multiplayer-focused games. However, unlike other multiplayer games made at the time, this wasn't made for consoles or PCs. For the most part, it was made for the good old arcades. Now, I don't think I need to tell you the difference between being a multiplayer game made for arcades and made for home consoles, because I believe that if you're this far into the video, you are a 200 IQ GigaChad who will subscribe right now. But still, if you're making something for a console, the hardware will slowly upgrade to new standards and it will eventually adapt to stuff like the internet and online gaming. But this is different for arcades because you can't really innovate with arcade machines except better graphics and funky controls. So let me ask you, would you expect some other game like Halo to expect almost everyone to play on couch co-op and have absolutely abysmal online? No? then why is it acceptable at all when fighting games do it? It is still so bad that fighting games are literally advertising that yes, we are finally making our games work now. Please congratulate us for this amazing feat.
We have decided to implement robot netcode to Dragon Ball Fighters.
Thank you.
Like imagine if the next Call of Duty game comes out and it proudly states, now with online play that actually works. Now if any fighting game devs are watching this, please, I know you probably won't listen, but I'm not excited that basic features are a part of your game. If there is some way to put it, it seems like every single fighting game is still stuck back in the 90s. Now listen, I understand if it's stuck in the past, at least it means it doesn't have any flaws of the present, right? Huh? Wait, what was that? I am just now receiving word that at EVO, the biggest fighting game event of the year, that the announcement where people were losing their minds over was an announcement of a better online connection beta. Wait. Surely that's the only thing, right? Everything else is completely fine? Wait, I am getting more news that the fighting games were the first games to have absolutely egregious pricing. You know Street Fighter 2? There were 5 versions of that game coming out within 3 years, all basically the same game, all costing full price. Nah, but that was back in the day. There's no way they do that nowadays. Let me just check Tekken 7 real quick. It cost $110 for a 6-year-old game to have all the content. Let that sink in. And that's not if you got it when it came out and bought all the DLC when it came out. Do you get my point now? It seems like fighting games are taking the worst of both times in every aspect but the game. I am starting to feel like a crazy man with how desensitized the whole fighting game community is towards this stuff. Now let me be clear. I love fighting games, but I think fighting games are the genre that proves that even if you have the best gameplay imaginable, your game can still flop. Fighting games are niche for absolutely no reason but the mindset of the devs and the players. Now let me talk about the worst part of fighting games next to online. The people playing these games. Now I'm not saying that the people playing are mean or anything, but to put it lightly, everybody is way too good at these games for anyone who isn't a masochist to want to play. Now this has a very easy solution called matchmaking or ranked or something, except these are all new concepts, so you probably won't see these for another 30 years. But trust me, the beta will be out in 20. To elaborate, it is never fun in games to constantly lose over and over to people who have triple your hours. It just doesn't make a good game no matter how much you try to tell yourself it does. Now I'm not saying you should always win, but I should never play and feel like I can't even touch the other guy. Now it's not just that the games are hard or that the matchmaking can suck. Look at League of Legends. That game can have some trash matchmaking. You can spend 40 minutes to an hour just to lose terribly. But you know what League has? What keeps people coming back? Something to work for. Progression. It may seem simple, but sometimes number on screen go up and that loss doesn't feel so bad anymore. New characters, new skins, new stuff being added, something always to work towards. Compare that to almost every fighting game there is, absolutely nothing you get except moving up the rank ladder and a half-baked arcade mode. There is literally no point to keep playing if you are not interested in being the best. And this basically sucks all potential for new players to join. And this is where I would end it and say that there is no hope for fighting games and they are eternally doomed to obscurity. But oh my god, things are looking good. So let's start with the fact that fighting games are finally adding good online that they've needed for the past 8 years. Finally, it no longer feels like you're playing a different game than when you're playing locally. Online events for fighting games will actually be good instead of something people despise. Honestly, this point alone would be enough to make fighting games infinitely better for me, as someone who's played over 1,000 hours of Smash Bros, about 70 of Tekken. But on top of that, it seems like we are no longer having stupid new versions of the game every 2 seconds. DLC still kinda sucks though, but as long as there are no loot boxes or NFTs, that's fine with me. Also, not to mention that esports are finally getting some cash flow, with Capcom announcing a $2 million of prize pool for the next Capcom Cup compared to the $150,000 of this year. And it doesn't really seem like a big deal to casual players, but it shows that the companies are finally, actually willing to invest in these games. And now to the two biggest parts of the change. Every other part of a fighting game besides the fighting. Like, finally! Starting with, it seems, Street Fighter 6, it's setting a precedent with having an actual, substantial story mode or single player instead of only an arcade mode. Like, now there is a real substance to play the game if you don't care about the online as much. It is literally an embarrassment that arcade mode is a core feature of fighting games. Like, most people nowadays haven't even been in an arcade, much less played a fighting game in one. And to finally talk about the biggest fighting game possibly on the horizon, Project L. Now, if you don't know about the second coming of the fighting game, known as Project L, let me enlighten you. It's a 2D tag fighting game made by Riot Games set in the world of League of Legends, using those characters. But that's not what makes this so exciting. For starters, this, in my mind, is going to be the fighting game with the most players, unless it absolutely sucks, by a mile. Second, it's free to play, which there have been literally no AAA fighting games that were free to play, except Multiversus. And that game is the only fighting game I've played to have absolutely trash gameplay. And it still had the highest number of players for a fighting game Steam ever had. Now, looking at the current numbers, it looks like that means Project L is also going to fall off. Free to play means nothing, and this brings me to the best part in my opinion, is that if there is one thing Riot knows how to do, and fighting games desperately lacked, was knowing how to keep players hooked. Like, look at League of Legends. That game has been keeping players and staying relevant, and even gaining relevance, since 2009, before StarCraft 2 came out. Now, this is all to say, it took a long time, but it finally feels like fighting games are moving into their second generation from the arcade days. It took a while, but it finally seems like it's happening. Thank you all for watching.